Okay, so what I do in Photoshop to edit, first you open up your file and this pops up, this is your raw editor. I just correct the image to where I feel like it's necessary. Sometimes it's just pulling out those highlights and then pushing the contrast up a bit. I might bump up the sharpen and see if it needs to be a little bit darker. And this opens up then in Photoshop. I use Greater Than Gatsby actions, which are really amazing. I've got two color overlays here that I've accidentally renamed and just left. But this one here is a clean color base edit, which are in most of their actions. It's usually in. Here we go. There's a clean color edit base, which is exactly what this is here. And so with my actions, I'll just play that one to do like a base coat. So this really enhances the colour. Sometimes it brings out the reds a lot. I might turn it down just a bit. So what else I usually do is, since I get a lot of red in my images, this red reduction, which is in the newborn essentials, because babies have a lot of red on their faces usually, you can do a whole lot of different retouching in the newborn to do with colour, like red splotches and stuff, but this red reduction is in a lot of actions. There's a lot of colour reduction, so I like to just rub that on the bits that are a little bit too red, sort of try and avoid lips, because lips are kind of supposed to be a bit red and not her hair obviously. It's a tiny bit there. So you can, make the brush size bigger or smaller with the opening closed brackets, which sometimes people don't know. So I'm happy with that. Then I go down and I use all of my colour overlays. These are some that I picked that I've liked and I've used constantly. I usually use this warm matte, which is quite a warm colour, and then you can brush this off like their faces at a low opacity up here. It's just a brush. It's probably too much, but yeah, I like to sometimes brush it off them just a little bit. Sometimes it just makes their skin a little bit too coloured. So you can turn off and on the difference. So I really like that. I do a nice little sort of overlay, sort of a matty kind of overlay, but I'll turn that quite down, and again I'll brush that using the black, brushing off on the white. I'll brush that sort of off again just a little bit. You see, if you use a black brush, that brushes over, so that's a bit of a difference. Just does the edging a tiny bit. Yeah, but that's mostly what I do with like portraits like this. That doesn't need a lot. It's quite an easy edit. Then I have a save and a close, which I've just recorded like a new action here. You can do a new action and record where it goes on your computer, so you're constantly just playing that action. But I've already edited this session, so that's easily done. With something like this, you want to straighten. I like to, everything's cropped on 12:8, which is a standard print sort of size mostly, but you want to make sure that this is actually straight to the horizon. But the same thing, colour overlay to, I guess, crisp the image up a lot. A very slow computer. And then I'll do the same like colour overlay here. It is quite much on this sort of image, so I do like to brush sort of, I don't know, the colour back around here, just a bit, nice blues and stuff. Another thing I like to use is a hair, I wish I could actually not rename it, but it's a hair and it's a hair contrast, which is in the Retouch Necessities, to sort of contrasts hair. It's a contrast boosting thing, a brush that I've used, and that always brings up like darkness and lightness in the image a lot nicer. So it's always nice to sort of brush around the centre sometimes if you want sort of like a centre highlight, but that looks really nice as it is. There's another actions that you can put over. I've got quite a few different ones that I've sort of used, but I don't like using stuff like this. I feel like it looks a bit tacky. You want to keep it very simple. I'll probably crop her to be a bit more in the centre of this image as well, just so you don't have it too awkwardly sided. No red reduction needs to be placed. There's really, once you sort of get an action you like, you can like layer them, obviously. Like this is like a hazy kind of one, but you turn the opacities down and stuff like that, and you can just layer, and sometimes it gives a little nice effect, but you don't want to put too much in. Another thing I'd like to do is sun flares, which are these ones down here, and once you've got that sort of picked, you just sort of move this gradient. It's like only a gradient. You can move the gradient to whatever side, like that, and then you can click on the mask here, and using the black paintbrush you can sort of mask it off of her face where you don't really want it, so it's sort of more like a backlight. This one's a nice one as well, but I think it's a bit too much sun for the image, and you can make them sort of wider and smaller, but it's fun to play around with. Yeah, another one I have already saved. Okay, so this with newborns. I just go in with my cloning tool first, which is this one here, spot healing brush. There's other ways to do this, using like the selection tool, but I really can never remember. Alright, so I'll just sort of delete some of the little fluffs, and he's got a little scratch and little minor things on him first, and then I'll try and fill in this background. So you can use a different way of filling in this background. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you get a clone of like the baby's head up here, which is not what you want. But this works good for me for now, until I decide that there's some easier way to do things, which there probably is. Turning this on its side, so I'll crop this in a little because you want it sort of centered, and then I'll run this colour base again. It's always something you sort of start with, and then sometimes you'll find that you can't use like your healing brush tool once you've done this base. It's because you can't, it's sort of copied your image. You see inside here, the first one here is it's like cloned your background a few times, so you're working sort of through two separate images now, but you can just flatten it, and that way it doesn't sort of affect anything. But I want this image to be quite dark, so I only want a small amount of enhancement on this kid's body, but flattening it does help with the next few things you want to do. It's just if you're wanting a dark image anyway. I like to get this darkening brush, which is in most of the actions, and I just run that sort of around in the spots that are darker. It doesn't affect the light bits overly much, but I like to just run that around the areas that I want to be dark. And there is like a make blacks black in this newborn. Darken mid-tones, you know, there's a whole lot of different things you can paint on. There's black and a black backdrop, which is awesome. That does that, but sometimes it's a little bit much, and you can brush it off, I believe. So like, it is helpful when you want just a little enhancement. It's good when you have black backdrops anyway. And then this is a different one that I've been using, but I only like it for skin tone, so I'll kind of make it a good colour on the skin, and then again I'll brush it off the background, because I do only like it on the skin, really. Turn this back up again. Let's see what we got. Because it does sort of lighten the image sometimes when you don't want it to, but see, that's kind of where I'm going with that. I'm just going to flip this image clockwise. You can tell that that's kind of not cropped center. Perfect. Another thing you can do there is another one here, which is just a skin smoother. And that will smoothen the skin, very self-explanatory. Which is really good with newborns, because sometimes, I mean, you don't want it to just be smooth as, like, you definitely want to, this is very smooth that I'm doing right now, but I'm going to brush that back off. But you see how that's like, you don't want it to look unrealistic. So you want the kid's skin to be smooth, but you just don't want it to be overly smooth. That's quite nice though. Again, with the red reduction, newborns have a very, very red feet and body parts, so you just want to brush bits of that off again. Maybe on the hand a bit. I'd still darken that image a lot more, so you can turn the opacity up, and I kind of want that to be a bit sort of more tanned. But you know, I'm liking that a lot. That's kind of what I was hoping for with that image. Brush in that a little bit, maybe a bit too dark, but I've already edited and I really like the final. So yeah, that's what I do with newborns. But yeah, this actions, the Greater Than Gatsby actions, I find are really helpful. Like, they've got so many things you can do. Like, if you play around with them, there's just so much. The clean workflow is really good. There's heaps of stuff to help with your eyes and stuff like that if you want to get super serious with every image. Otherwise, there's tons of different actions you can put over. There's more colour bases you can put over, tone enhancements, black and whites again. Some of them are way cool, and I just would not know how to use them, but you know, depends on your style. But yeah, that's how I edit in Photoshop CC, hardly using anything but the cloning brushes. You can use the stamp, which will do the same thing, clone sections. I don't dodge or anything much, just, you know, crop, straightening. Yeah, depending on what I'm doing. Sometimes I do face swap, but you know, select areas and stuff. But yeah, otherwise, that's what I do.